We are live.
Good morning, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to the April Planning Committee meeting. Promises, I think, to be a very exciting and interesting day. So, members, does anybody have to declare a pecuniary interest on any item that's on our agenda today? If so, raise your hand, and we don't have anybody coming in virtually. That's correct. Okay, so no conflicts. Members, does anybody want anything separate for discussion purposes? We have the two statutory hearings. They, of course, are dealt with separately, but we do have two items for consideration, 611, 612, and a consent minutes 6.2. Anybody want those separated? Can I get a mover and seconder then to place the items, those three items for consideration that have not been separated? Moved by Councillor McCurry. Seconded by Councillor Sluss. I'll now call the vote on the items, those three items that have not been separated.
All items not separated for discussion purposes carry on a recorded vote of 6-0. Those voting in favor, Mayor Davis, Councillor Sokoli, Sluss, McCreary, Carpenter, and Van Tilburg. Yeah.
And Lisa, could you just read the item, the title of the three items we voted on?
The items subject to the vote are item 6.1.1, Grant West Phase 2 Subdivision Traffic and Parking Control, item 6.1.2, Grant West Heights Phase 2 Pre-Servicing Agreement, and item 6.2.1.1, Planning Committee Minutes, March 7th, 2024.
Thank you. So we'll move on to the statutory public hearings, and we have two on today's agenda. The public meeting is held in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act. The purpose of each of the hearings will be to discuss the application and to hear from the public either in support of or against the application. At the end of each public meeting, the committee will discuss and pass a recommendation, which is generally considered for a final decision at the next meeting of council, which would be the last Tuesday of this month. The name of anyone who speaks in regards to any item will appear within the meeting minutes. Anyone wishing notice of any further proceedings regarding the application should also provide their name and address to the clerk's office. We ask the members of the public in attendance today that want to speak to an item, please ensure you add your contact information to the sign-in sheet. It's located at the delegates table at the back of the room. So the process we follow is that the applicant speaks first, followed by municipal staff, and then the public. Each will have up to 10 minutes to speak, inclusive of any questions from the committee. The applicant will then have up to 5 minutes to provide clarification to any questions or issues that arise during the statutory hearing. As a reminder, the following rules of decorum as set forth in the city's procedural bylaw apply. No person shall display any sign, banner, or placard in the meeting room other than materials that, in the opinion of the chair, are legitimate audiovisual aids necessary in connection with any of presentations made to the committee. All persons present shall use polite and respectful language and shall refrain from the use of any language or the making of any gesture that is disrespectful or offensive. All persons addressing the committee shall speak only on the subject in debate and shall not speak on any other subject. No person shall applaud participants in debate or engage in conversation or behavior that may disrupt the proceedings of the meeting. So with that, we'll now proceed to item 4.1. 4.1 is zoning bylaw amendment PZ 1933. It's in relation to 50 Market Street South. So I'll now call upon the applicant or the agent, if you would come forward, please, to the delegates table. If you would please state your name and mailing address, and then you'll have 10 minutes to make your presentation.
Good morning, Mayor, councillors, members of the committee. My name is Jonathan Tinney. I'm a principal with SVN Architects and Planners. My mailing address is 393 Armadale Avenue, Toronto, Ontario. I'm here this morning to speak to the application for 50 Market Street South. Sorry, apologies. How do I'll just say when I need the slide changed? Okay, great. Next slide. We'll run through a few things this morning. We'll just provide a review of the site and context, talk briefly about the consultation on the application to date, and then do a quick summary of the proposal. Next slide. Next slide again. The site is well known to folks here in Brantford. It sits at the corner of ICOM Drive and Market Street South. It's made up of three, thank you. It's made up of three properties, 22 Market Street South, 78 ICOM, and 50 Market Street. Excuse me. The location is well suited. It sits within the, whoops, I'm trying to get this to go forward here. Oh. Sorry, I can't seem to get the next slide. Sorry, folks. Where do I? Oh, now I've done it. Now I've done it. There we go. Perfect. Sorry about that. The site is extremely well suited within the lower portion of downtown Brantford. It is walking distance to all of the different amenities and retail activities within the historic downtown, as well as the emerging higher educational facilities as part of Wilfrid Laurier University. It's across the street from the Civic Center as well as the casino site, and as well located to a number of different park spaces along the riverfront. There you go. It's also along a number of different transportation routes that provide a lot of access currently to the retail services within the site and provide for vehicle and pedestrian access in and out of the site and into the downtown core, as well as strong transit connections to the rest of the region. From a policy perspective, the site sits within the urban growth center for the city, and it's a strategic growth area identified within the official plan for the city of Brantford. At its core, the policy really is aiming to develop downtown Brantford as a complete community, looking for opportunities for residential intensification, additional non-residential uses, opportunities for economic development and vibrancy. We feel strongly that this application moves the city's policy forward in a really significant way in terms of supporting all sorts of different uses that add to the downtown core as a destination, maintain the existing retail services, but also add significant new housing opportunities, new shoppers, new body heat to the downtown, which will support it in its growth as it goes forward. As part of the application, we've done a number of different consultation activities to date to inform how this rather sizable project can fit well within the context of downtown Brantford. Starting at the beginning of 2022, we've begun a number of different conversations with city staff as well as local stakeholders. From a formal perspective, there have been two very well attended public meetings where we've been able to gather comments from the public, a number of different meetings, both at the technical level and informal meetings with city staff. City staff have been fantastic to work with to help guide us through this process and identify real opportunities to make this a much better project. There's also been a round of engagement with local Indigenous groups, which again have provided invaluable input into the project and help to inform specifically some of the designs for the public spaces as they go forward. All of these have informed the design, and if summarizing at a high level some of the things that we've heard, we've certainly heard strong support for the project in terms of bringing new housing opportunities to the city, specifically in relation to rental housing, student-focused housing, but also just new smaller housing units that are more affordable to smaller households, as well as the maintenance of the retail. I believe that was a concern at first, but I think we've heard strong direction from the community about maintaining the retail uses on site, specifically the FreshCo, and those are commitments made by the owner. We've also heard the standard responses around concerns about parking and transportation. In terms of parking, we're meeting the emerging regulatory policies around parking within Brantford. And on the transportation, while there are some impacts, they are mitigatable through technical outputs. The vision for the site is a mixed-use urban neighborhood. Ultimately, the design of the site will reflect the sort of grain and scale and pattern of downtown Brantford, but won't be a sort of pastiche or a kind of a Disneyfied replication of it. It will be modern, but will represent some of the similar kinds of patterns that we see within the rest of the downtown. The format will take a parking lot, what is largely a parking lot, an at-grade retail and so a rather vehicle-focused site, and turn it into a pedestrian-focused site that turns those parking lots into new development, structured around a number of open spaces. The site is broken into 4 blocks. Each of those blocks is structured around a structured parking facility within the middle. That parking facility is then ringed by retail and other residential and non-residential uses to hide the parking, but allow for enough parking on site above grade. In terms of key statistics, the project will replace the existing 9,400 square feet of retail uses with a total of 167,000 square meters of development. This will be broken into approximately 2,300 housing units, as well as 17,200 square meters of non-residential activity, split between retail and other institutional type uses. The design for the facility is really built around public spaces, specifically public gathering areas in the core, and focused on a really strong public realm, providing public squares, parks, opportunities for public gathering. The intent of this of this area is to welcome people in, not just those who are shopping, not just those who live there, but the public at large for activities, festivals, musical events, other things on a regular basis. The ground plane will be urban. It will feel comfortable. There will be trees trees. It will feel like an urban district, similar to what we see elsewhere within the downtown core, with a very high quality of public realm finish. The residential areas, again, will take an urban approach, but will focus a number of sort of eyes on the street, front doors, ways to keep these more residential focused areas of the site vibrant, active, even if there isn't necessarily retail that fronts the ground floor. In terms of phasing, the approach to the site will go forward over 4 sort of major phases. The first will see redevelopment of some of the existing parking lots, allowing for most of the existing retail to continue to operate. This will allow for the opportunity to move significant retailers into the first phase, and then around to move the different retailers through as new phases are completed. That completes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Councilor Carpenter.
Yes, when would you start this project if approved?
Yeah. Oh, sure. Yeah, come up. Through the mayor, just ask the owner, Paul Rosetto, to answer that question.
It'll all depend, of course, on the market. Right now, the market is somewhat slow, but we're looking to potentially be into the ground in 2025. That's our best guess at the moment.
Okay, because we've approved a lot of developments that have yet to hit the ground. So your plan isn't just to get a zoning application on this property and then flip it. Your plan is to actually see
No.
it to completion.
We're going to be owners of this plaza in terms of the retail side of it. There's probably close to 500,000 square feet that we will maintain after we build this property out.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Scully.
Yes, thank you. You sort of touched on this, but I just want to ensure that I'm understanding it correctly. There's a number of commercial tenants in there, and I spend a lot of time in that plaza. And there's some concerns that they're going to be, shut down for a period of time. And I just want to fully understand if you have a plan to accommodate those tenants and their fixtures and whatnot during the phase construction.
That's my team has spent a great deal of time at Paul's direction to look at opportunities to build out the site so that we can maintain those retailers. Most of them are on longer term leases, and so they need to be accommodated. And so the intent is to, again, build the project stepwise so that as the first phase comes on board, we can take a number of retailers, move them into the first phase. That frees up the space where we can then start to build a second phase.
Perfect. My next question is about underground parking. If we were to approve this today, what measures have you given consideration to secure the underground parking? And what measures do you suggest, or do you think you'll have in place to separate the public parking area from the, say, residential units?
We haven't sorted that out fully. Obviously, we're at the zoning stage currently, but it's a relatively straightforward approach that we see in mixed-use developments all over the country, where you're able to create additional levels. Those levels that are sort of closest to the ground typically are maintained for the retailers, so that it's, people coming in and out can do so on as easy a basis as possible. There's usually direct connections, oftentimes through escalators or elevators, other things directly into the retailers. And then the residential parking can then go above, separated by a separate security gate. Again, we haven't sorted all that out, but the intent is that all of that will be addressed, and that the parking standards applied here are enough parking for both the retailers and the residential.
Okay, I just want to ensure you've given consideration.
So I'm going to have to interrupt. We've gone past 10 minutes. Can I get a motion that we extend ISOGEST by 10 minutes this presentation? Moved by Councillor Slash, seconded by Councillor McCreary. Any discussion on that? Take the vote, please.
The motion to waive the rules to extend the time is approved on a recorded vote of 6-0. Those voting in favor, Mayor Davis, Councillor Sokoli, Sless, McCreary, Carpenter, and Van Tilburg.
Go ahead, Councillor Scully.
Thank you. And is it the developer's intention to retain ownership of the commercial space and lease that back out? Or are you planning on selling off the commercial space?
No, we'll be maintaining all the non-residential stuff that's being sold off in terms of condos, even rental apartments. We're going to maintain everything else other than that.
Glad to hear. Thank you.
Councillor Slash.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Welcome. I read in the background material that in phase one, the beer store and Boston Pizza would be demolished to allow the project to start, I guess, a preparation, or where I forget the terminology used, but you can't do anything until you get them out of the way, and then you can start to configure things to move forward. What happens to those two entities while that's going on?
Yeah, they're in the transition phase, and so we're looking right now to move them elsewhere around the property so that they're not shutting down at all. It was a bit of a challenge initially, but we're working towards making sure that they don't close down at all.
Okay, so there'll be continuity then of operation, that there won't be an interruption of any
That's the plan.
significant amount.
Certainly for the rest of the plaza, 100%. Those two in particular, we're just working through a plan to get them moved at another location, temporary, and then back into the project.
Okay, thank you. And I guess lastly, this is something we've probably never seen the likes of in this city. It's a major investment and development going on. Can you put a dollar value on the total build out when it's completed? What you're looking at? It would be not in the millions, but in the billions, would it not?
Correct. It'd be, my best guess right now, $1.5 billion.
1.5 billion?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Van Tilburg.
Thank you, Chair. It was mentioned earlier by a councillor that you have underground parking. I would hope that you do not have underground parking. Is that an oversight on your reply?
Through the mayor, thank you, Councillor. I meant to make that correction and then got caught up in another bit of the comment. No, it's not underground parking.
Okay.
It's an above ground structured parkade. But what we do is we'll skin that parkade in retail uses and other non-residential uses. So it will appear from the outside to be the podium of a building. But that parking will be above the ground.
I understand that. So it's very important if it got reported underground parking, or that the community thought there was underground parking in an area that can't have underground parking, that would have been problematic. So we just wanted to make sure that that was clear. There's no underground You have 2,300 units coming in. How many residential parking spaces for those residential units?
Total is about 700, about 1,936 parking spaces.
1,936? Okay. And then you have currently roughly 500 parking spots for what is essentially the plaza now.
Mhm.
So how many parking spots do you have allotted for the retail you have expanded retail units. So how much parking do we have to accommodate that?
The specific split, look to my colleagues behind me, the specific split, don't have off the top of my head. But within that 1,900, we've identified about 0.7 units of parking per each of the residential units and about 1 parking space for every 3 square meters of the commercial. And that number was derived not from the existing parking supply, but rather from the usage of the existing parking. So our transportation consultants did a review of how much of those 500 spaces are being utilized.
What
and
was that response? What's the percentage in at peak times?
The percentage, again, it works out to about 1 space for every 3 square meters.
No, I mean the percentage of the retail usage in the plaza today
The-
where people are saying they can't get a parking spot.
People are saying that.
So that would sound to me as over 100% because I have people complaining because they can't get parking.
I wouldn't say that. So the work that our consultant didn't find that was the case.
Okay.
And so on average, we see the parking utilized at about 50 to 60%.
Really?
Yes.
Well, that's interesting. Thank you very much for that. You state that these parking concerns are standard. I would say that if you were dealing with a blank slate, open piece of property that wasn't a plaza, I mean, really what this plaza is in what we call Upper Eagle Place, we may call it lower downtown, but Coring Watrous was never in the lower downtown. It is essentially a shopping plaza. I mean, you've made this very clear. You're removing vehicular traffic and bringing in a pedestrian mindset. And what we got right now is essentially a competitive type plaza to what would be Linden Park Mall or the Commons Plaza in where Walmart is. So we have a lot of what I would call working class traffic and shoppers in that mall. That is the number one feature that keeps coming up. It's not necessarily your build, what you're doing. It's, and you've made it very clear that you don't want to accommodate the working class.
Councilor
people that
Van Til,
drive there.
are
What
you
are
writing
you
it a
doing to
question,
address
Councilor Van
those?
Til?
Yes, it's coming right now. What are you doing to address those? There's in your comments to address, to say such as, will the Tim Hortons have a drive-through or will that be gone? Let's just start with some preliminary basics like that.
The concept for the site will not accommodate a drive-through, no. There will be, I think the response to the parking being provided within the site will be commensurate with the usage that we're seeing today. So in terms of the per square foot needs for parking, they're similar to the needs for parking that we see today. So there's from that perspective, there's relatively limited loss in that functionality. It's within the owner's best interest to maintain the viability and the accessibility via vehicles for all of these retailers. Most of these retailers have provisions within their leases that provide a certain access to a certain amount of parking. So parking is a requirement. It's always at the same time in large developments like this in cities across Canada, it's always a worry of the public, and rightly so. Everybody is concerned about their ability to get to the services that they care about. I think in this case, it's a different form of parking. I think the comments that we received, that it's a different way to access some of these services than people are perhaps used to. But the benefit that we have in this is that this will develop out over years. And so when the first phase is complete, some of that parking will be within the structure of the first phase. A significant amount of at-grade parking and parking lots will still remain. And so this will move sort of in a stepwise basis. And so the people who utilize that plaza will have the opportunity to get used to the way to access those services over the course of years.
Okay, thank you very much for your question, for your answers to my question.
Councilor Curry.
Mayor, thank you. Welcome, guys. Could you tell us what your anticipated population will be of residents for your development?
Well, that would depend on the number of people per unit. But most of the units in here, a number of them will be a little smaller, focus on the rental market, on student market. With 2,300 units, we could assume something like about 1.5 people per unit, just as a guess. And so you're looking at something in the area of about, my math is.
We'll say 4,000 or 5,000,
I think, closer to sort of, yeah, about 3,500.
okay, yeah, depending upon family sizes, if you get
Yes.
families. So you greatly exceed the limits for heights. Can you explain why you can't do the project based upon the city's limit on height?
It's not that we can't do the project. It's just that in order to provide the level of residential density and body heat here within that height frame, we take the form of the development and we squash it down. And so we end up with these big chunky blocks that ultimately we cease to sort of provide an opportunity to replicate and the kind of form that we see within the downtown. So if you think of the downtown core, you see a range of different buildings at different heights. Obviously, some of the heights within this development go a little higher than what we typically see in the downtown, but given its location within the lower downtown, there's an opportunity to use those heights, break up the massing, allow more light to enter into those public spaces. And that's a big sort of incentive from our perspective, from a design perspective, is making sure those public spaces are sunny, vibrant, active, inviting for people. They're a big draw for the retailers as much as they are benefits to the residents.
Super, thank you. And can you explain why you would want to have at-ground townhouses on this site?
Not every square foot of the site is sort of amenable to retail. Some of those areas, especially the ones facing the northwest, become a bit more challenging for a retailer to want to go in them. But there's a really important principle within planning to keep sort of something active at the street. And so the benefit of townhouses is that they have front doors. People come and go out of them the same way you would see in a single family neighborhood. And so it provides that level of activity. It provides that sort of visibility onto the street, as opposed to, sort of a standard kind of apartment frontage, which tends to look a little more inwardly. And the intent here is to give those streets a bit of a neighborhood feel, right? It's not single family homes, but when you see a row of front doors, it starts to feel a bit like that. And so the idea.
Do the townhouses face the new street on the south border of the property?
Yes,
They do, okay.
some do, yes.
So sorry, I have to interrupt because we've gone past the 10 minutes. I suggest we extend another 10 minutes. So moved by Councillor Van Tilborg, seconded by Councillor Sless. Any discussion? Would you please take the vote?
The motion to waive the rules is carried on a recorded vote of 5-1. Those voting in favor, Mayor Davis, Councillor Sokoli, Sless, Carpenter, Van Tilburg. Those opposed, Councillor McCreary.
Please proceed, Councillor McCreary.
Thank you. I voted against because the rest of my questions can be asked of staff.
Great, let's move on to, I've got a couple of questions for you. Before I go to a second round, and also Councillor Samuel will pull you in after I ask my questions. So I live in Echo Place and obviously work downtown. So I'm in and out of that plaza probably 4 to 5 times a week. I generally don't have any difficulty finding parking, but when there is a hockey game across the street, that's a different story. How are you going to deal with that? Because there have been a number of complaints and concerns from residents in the surrounding neighborhoods that they have difficulty finding parking.
This has come up, of course, when it first occurred back in the fall time. Part of the issue is parking management. And I think, and I thought we had addressed it in a big way by having the right people directing people to the various parking lots. And I think that the answer to that is the parkade is underutilized right now. So I think in the new season coming forward, I think if you have the right amount of staff directing people, that should alleviate the problem on our end.
I'm not so much talking about right now. How, when you proceed through phases 1, 2, and 3, How are you going to deal with that? Because you cannot voice that onto the municipality. You have responsibility as a property owner to address that. How are you going to address it?
We have the option to increase our parkade, especially in phases 3 and 4 facing Market Street. So as we get to that level, and if we see that there's more demand for parking, then we can put in paid parking if necessary to deal with those events. So it's certainly something that's come up now, even through this project about traffic. Traffic's always an issue. But our traffic consultants will deal with that as we progress forward through the various phases so that we don't run into that problem.
Right, and also in reference to the property across the street owned by the city, there's currently a civic center there, which is sports and entertainment center, which is now has a lot more traffic than it had a year ago. Potentially, there could be another center across the street. I think it's safe to say over the next 10 years, there's going to be much more activity on that lot in terms of sports events, entertainment events, trade shows, conventions, that sort of thing. Has that influenced to any degree what you planned for your property? Are you doing anything to accommodate or interact with that potential growth?
That's what I mentioned. Phases 3 and 4 in particular is where we have the option to increase the parkade sizes. So I think that we'll work in conjunction with whoever's doing that side of the street, city and ourselves collectively. That whole downtown area needs to be addressed as a one collective versus individually. And so we can address everybody's parking needs.
I'm not talking about parking now. I'm talking about the alignment of the commercial space, the alignment of the residential space on Market Street side of this property. Have you, in the design of the facility that you've got planned, have you incorporated into that a vision for how that side of the property might interact or support what's going to happen across the street? This isn't parking I'm talking about now.
Through the mayor, absolutely. So, one of the key drivers of the design of the site is where it sits within the city, and what those uses are around the outside. And so, our concept looks at Market Street as, as a sort of a primary sort of entry point into that precinct. And so the frontage facing Market Street will have sort of active uses on it that will invite people into the district. The access point, the east-west street within our site lines up with the access point to the civic precinct and the casino. And so the intent is, I can envision on game nights that flow of people who move out of the hockey arena into this district, if it's warm enough, potentially sort of landing at patios and restaurants and other things that will inhabit the ground floors. The idea of a place to go for food before and a drink after the game in that sort of full-scale kind of activity district is a key part of what sort of drove some of the design approaches.
And so I've been to the Lansdowne Arena in Ottawa, and across the street there is something similar to that. Are you familiar with that area in Ottawa?
I am, yes.
Yeah. So is that what you have in mind?
Something like that. That one obviously is quite integrated, where those additional uses are on the exact same site. But, as you leave that site and you move up and down within the glebe, that sort of fabric and that sort of symbiosis gets created within those particular areas. This would be on a smaller scale, something similar to what you might see at Camden Yards in Baltimore or the Staples Center in Los Angeles, those kinds of things where, the hockey arena lets out into something that allows for and absorbs those people and their activities.
Right. Councillor Stonewall, your turn.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. I do have a few questions for you. One, I noted on your slide that included all the amenities in the area. Earl Haig was not included, the water park. Would there be a reason for that? Why that wouldn't be included as an amenity?
Oh, apologies. It didn't find its way onto the map, but if you recall my comments, I sort of identified all of those different sort of parks and open space amenities within the area. The riverfront itself, all of that, we would see as being significant benefits to future residents of this development.
Okay, thank you. And my second question, I was able to attend a lot of like your community meetings and things like that, and I heard a lot of concerns, and you had a slide that included some of them. And what I would like to know is what you've done differently to address the concerns that you've heard from the community, such as, I know we've talked a little bit about parking already, but what has changed since the beginning, and the traffic and the access to this property?
Through the chair, the output that you see here is the response that we've been able to provide. So in terms of the conversations around parking, we've engaged our traffic consultants to dig into that and assess that. We've worked with staff to align so those parking standards with the emerging regulation here within the city. So those are a clear sort of output. In terms of business continuity, again, working very diligently to look at a phasing strategy that allows for us to maintain business continuity of the businesses within the site. We also heard from a number of people who are really looking for and seeking these new housing and housing type units. And so thinking about that mixture of both condo, rental, and student housing, conversations between the owner and some of the educational institutions to see about opportunities to bring them into that. All of those things are sort of being brought to the site and try to balance out as much as we can, increase the opportunity and mitigate any of the impacts. And we feel that the application in front of you does that.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted that clarified because I'm not seeing a lot of changes since the beginning. So, and then just one final question actually that came up with something that was said. The potential of looking at paid parking, is that something that you're considering?
No, there will be no paid parking for all the existing uses that we have on site right now. That comment was only is if we had to add extra to accommodate for other facilities around us that we would obviously couldn't bear it on the project itself. But for the uses internally, there's no paid parking.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, second time around, Councillor Sokoler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I do want to apologize for misusing my language. I did know that it's on ground and kind of is encapsulated in the building, but the parkades, they're enclosed, correct? It's not going to be just this ugly parkade at ground level and then beautiful above it, right? It's all enclosed.
It is enclosed.
Okay.
As planners and architects, we don't like the sight of the outside of a parkade.
Neither do I. Thank you. How many commercial units are on site right now as it stands?
I'm guessing maybe 25.
And how many are proposed to be developed by the end of this?
Well, we're going from 100,000 square feet to 150,000. So it depends on the size of who comes in here, right?
Okay.
The smaller units will be obviously more, but that hasn't been determined at the moment.
Okay. I'm more so wondering if there's gonna be ability for new retailers to come in and set up shop based on what's the direction that it seems that we're going for that neighborhood. There will be opportunity. There'll be new commercial spaces created through this.
Yes.
Okay. And I frequently see when condos are built, the commercial use at the bottom and then residential above, but those commercial units are not frequently outfitted appropriately to accommodate with the HVAC, like certain types of retail, so restaurants and things like that with the HVAC. I just want to be sure that you're going to be creating an environment in the retail space that will accommodate pubs and restaurants and things that I think we want to see down there. Can you verify that that's your intention at this point?
Absolutely. I think when you typically see that, it's in a situation where a developer is required to provide retail at grade as a general use. And then it ends up that the retailer they're able to find is not maybe the one they were anticipating. In this case, a significant number of the retailers in each phase will be ones that we move from somewhere on site. And so the ability to undertake all of those types of improvements at the design phase for the project will be there. So the ability to create fit for purpose space, conversations have already been happening with some of the retailers. We're looking at the first phase to ensure that those envelopes that we're showing you as part of even at this zoning stage, that those can accommodate the kind of users that we already have on site.
Very good. Thank you.
We still have, I think, at least one or two councillors that would like to ask some further or additional questions. We've gone beyond the 10 minutes. Does anybody have an appetite to extend again? Councillor Sluss, what's your Resolutions, 5 minutes, 10 minutes? 10. Is there a seconder for that? Counselor Van Tilburg, any discussion? Please take the vote.
The motion to waive the rules carries on a recorded vote of 4-2. Those voting in favor, Mayor Davis, Councillor Sokoli, Sless, and Van Tilburg. Those opposed, Councillor McCreary and Councillor Carpenter.
Counselor Sless.
Thank you. Just something I missed the first time around. You've referred to some of the housing as attainable. Can you tell me the portion of the residential that would be attainable?
Yeah, attainable is a term that is sort of more of a general term. The use of it, though, applies to some of the condo units because they are smaller. So because they are smaller, they tend to be affordable to smaller households than a number of the single family homes that would otherwise be available to them in the city. So we don't have specific price points for them, but comparatively to some of the other housing within the community, these would be sort of at the lower end of the market.
So attainable then would refer to the condo, not the rental portion?
Well, the rental becomes attainable because rental tends to be cheaper than condo for most people. But again, the intent is that the housing is provided for the local community. It's marketed to the local community. And so the price points are such that they would accommodate local folks.
Fine, thank you. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Counselor Van Tilburg.
So these will be rentals, not condos?
A portion of the units will be rentals. So there's about 250 will be market rental. About 290 are focused at students, so student housing units, and the remainder will be condo.
And so the attainable does not, not in respect to anything that's sold as a condominium. A condo.
No, my characterization of attainable includes the condominiums because they're smaller unit sizes. And so smaller unit sizes within the market tend to be cheaper than larger units. And so it provides for housing options that can be afforded by smaller households here in the community.
Okay, thank you. I understand that. You also mentioned though that it would be a local market, and obviously we know that people that aren't local buy these things, so it's whatever they're used to paying. That sets the market. I do want to comment. I believe I don't see it here. Perhaps I'm mistaken, but I had thought that you had made some changes to the drawings that were more heritage oriented and brought that to one of the meetings. Am I incorrect in that? That you had a different artistic conception of the drawings?
The designs have changed over time. They've tended to stay in a contemporary form. However, we've tried to align changing facades, the use of materials, all of those kinds of things that would mimic what you would see in the downtown core. The intent is not to create a sort of Victorian sort of pastiche here on this site. Downtown Brantford has, it's lovely, and we want it to stay its own thing. But the intent here is that it would mimic some of the forms that you would see.
And what is a mechanical penthouse?
It includes things like the chiller for any air conditioning units. It includes mostly the overrun portion of the elevator. And so those things will pop out. They're not habitable spaces, but they're the mechanical things that pop out of the top of a building. Typically they get screened so they don't look like mechanical things.
And so people will not be living in those penthouses.
No.
Because they are a mechanical fixture. I just want people to be clear in case they thought penthouse, cool, I want to be at the top.
You wouldn't want to live in these.
Thank you.
Counselor Carpenter.
Yes, the access point off Clarence Street South, currently it's not really accessible. It's got a lane that fits maybe a car and a half on a traffic flow that flows through Clarence Street heading to West Brant. Is there a change in that design? And it looks like you've got 2 lanes coming in on the drawing. It's hard to tell.
So the plan that we proposed does change the intersection design based on the recommendation from a transportation engineer, which will allow the ease in congestion at that intersection. So our site plan does propose a change on our side for that intersection.
So a new queuing lane coming in that's larger than the one that's existing today.
Potentially.
Okay, and thank you. And my follow-up question too is that next to that, we also have a heritage site, a railway station. Have you done a heritage impact study? I see somebody nodding in the audience that's probably with you, so
Yeah, we provided the heritage impact study both on the archaeological side and through the study of its impact. We did a presentation to the Heritage Committee. I'm going to walk them through the proposal. I think the response was quite positive in terms of the build farm response and also the height response, which acknowledges the location of the station site.
Yeah, and a final design question. When you talk about the design, you're going to cover the facades of the parking garage. I wish we had done that, but we still could, I guess. But the facades, are we using stucco or are we using brick? Or are we using something that's more, like stucco's not very classy and it breaks down over time?
No, the specific materials haven't been chosen at this point at the zoning stage, but the intent is not to use stucco. It's more of those sorts of products that would again mimic some of the kinds of things you see in the downtown core in a more contemporary way. So things like brick, as well as some sort of panels, metal panels that provide a sort of pattern on them that would mimic some of the ornamentation you see elsewhere in the downtown.
And is it your intent, and I believe it is, but I just want to clarify that you're going to build a development here that's one of a kind for our city, and it will set the standards going forward for a Class C development?
Certainly from my perspective, and I think I can speak for my client and sort of say, absolutely. The intent of this is a quality product that enhances downtown Brantford. I grew up in a town similar to Brantford and Belleville on the other side. And, the idea of an opportunity to do something that enhances and builds the downtown core, it's what got me into planning.
And I guess that would set the standard for others to try and achieve something similar or better than. Thank you.
We would love this to be a benchmark, yes.
Benchmark that's the point. Thank you.
Yeah, so I have another question. It has to do with the attainable housing issue. And I recall at one of the meetings, I believe it was Mr. Rosetto talked about a kind of unique program that would assist some purchasers in the financing of their purchases. It was can't remember the name of the program. Is that still being considered?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, we met with them yesterday, this group, and they're involved with the province, private sector to put this program together. And absolutely. So we've already earmarked at least 150 units under this program.
Can you just give us a high level overview? How does that program work?
Well, it's similar to a rent to own kind of a program. There's various different variations of it happening right now. This is at a different level because the province is engaged in it through, and CMHC is also in part of it. So they offer, mortgages at a cheaper rate. We as the group help with the down payment, and then every month a certain amount of their payment, which is the so-called rent, it applies to the principal payment, so that over a course of so many years, usually 3, they now have the option to go into a standard mortgage, and now they have enough equity to be able to buy it and move on. So that's in the general scope of how that works.
And what's the name of that program?
Well, Key Living is the private sector that's doing it. There's not really a program specifically because everybody's just getting their hands around it. The province came up with this attainable housing platform, but it wasn't well defined, and they're just defining it at the moment.
Right. Well, I want to thank you very much for a very thorough presentation and answering lots of questions. And of course, you will have an opportunity at the end to give us a 5-minute wrap up if you deem that necessary. So for now, we're going to move over to staff presentation. And Tosh, I understand that you've got this file. It's a big file. So you now have 10 minutes.
Perfect. All right. Well, first I want to thank Mr. Chair, of course, the counselors, the applicants team, and everybody from the public who took the time to come today. My name is Tasha Adair. I am the development planner assigned to this file, and I'll be presenting the zoning application for 50 Market Street South. So this amendment will facilitate the construction of a multi-phased 4-block mixed-use development, which will contain 2,307 residential units and 17,623 square meters of GFA of commercial use on the ground floor. The subject lands are located on the eastern portion of Market Street, south of ICOM Drive and west of Clarence Street. The subject properties have a combined area of approximately 45,392 square meters, which is about 4.3 hectares, and currently contain a commercial plaza with associated surface parking. So the site plan on screen here details the proposed development. So each block will be connected through a centralized 5 to 6 story internal parking structure. 5 towers are proposed across the 4 blocks, which range in height from 14 to 26 stories. And there'll be attached mid-rise components ranging in height from 9 stories to 13 stories. So the lands are designated downtown urban growth center as per the official plan. And additionally, the site is within the lower downtown precinct, which is planned to accommodate significant intensification through the redevelopment of vacant and underutilized lands and through residential intensification of existing commercial developments. The application was evaluated with respect to the provincial policy statement, the growth plan, and the official plan, in which staff have determined that the proposed development does conform. The subject lands are currently zoned floodplain core commercial, which is F-C1. In consultation with the ward councillors, a neighborhood meeting was held in June of 2023, and a second neighborhood meeting was held in February of 2024 after a large quantity of responses were received from the first public meeting. Since the public meeting, 4 public comments have been received, which were on April 15th, 16th, and 17th, so just earlier this week. In regards to the proposed amendments, the site-specific provisions are required to permit this development, which will include modifications to the maximum building height, building step-backs, minimum ground floor height, front yard, planting strip, parking, and loading. In regards to development considerations, this will include the implementation of a holding provision, which can be broken down into 3 separate requirements. So that would be servicing, shoring, and wind study. A holding provision is required for the servicing to ensure that adequate infrastructure is available. The peer review modeling will assist in determining capacity for the phasing of the development. A holding provision is required for the confirmation of shoring requirements. Through the subsequent site plan control process, further construction and excavation details will be finalized. And given the proposed height of this development, the applicant must demonstrate through a wind study that wind conditions on site will be further assessed and mitigated if required. And just to conclude here, so the proposed development is considered compatible with the surrounding land uses and will assist in meeting the future needs of the residents of the city. This project will act as a catalyst for the future of future development and will actively transform our downtown as envisioned and planned for in the city's official plan. It has potential to bring a larger population base to the downtown core by being more pedestrian friendly and supportive of the current and proposed retail and residential uses in the downtown. This development will assist in achieving a majority of the city's economic goals by bringing a larger number of people, residential units, and commercial opportunities into the downtown area, while beneficially adjacent to the proposed future sports and entertainment center, the Brantford Farmers Market, casino, and other approved higher density residential developments. So that would conclude my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Councillor Sluss.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Probably through you, Mr. Mayor, to Nicole. Nicole, this is on a scale that we've never done before in the city. And is your comfort level good that we have the background and the capacity to internally handle everything that's going on here? And I don't mean that in a demeaning way. I mean, we've never dealt with this before. So are you comfortable with the capacity we have within your planning department to be able to handle something of this nature?
Through the chair to the counselor, Nicole Wilmot, Director of Planning and Development Services. You're absolutely correct. This is a development that we've not seen the scale of before, but it is envisioned in our official plan, and you know, there is opportunity on this existing underutilized site to see what we feel comfortable with in terms of what's being proposed today. In terms of capacity, the planning department and you know, there are changing times that are happening, and we are often faced with complex applications. And I feel confident that we have the capacity as well as the experience and expertise within the department to you know, stick handle this application. We'll also rely on many internal departments to help support this application moving forward, particularly PW will play a large role in this as well. And then just recognizing the willingness of the applicant team. We've had several meetings and conversations, not only with the owner, but the architects and their support staff as well. So we feel confident that we have that capacity to support this project moving forward.
Great. I appreciate the assurance. Thanks, Nicole. And more of a technical thing, maybe to Mr. Peaver and maybe Nicole, I'm not sure, but the infrastructure, I would be convinced is adequate for the amount of infill that's going in here, 2,300 homes, that type of thing. If there is capacity increases required or upgrades to handle this type of development, who would be responsible financially for those upgrades?
Through the chair, Gary Peaver, Manager of Development Engineering. Through the chair to yourself, generally that would be on the development community. We are going to be working with the other developments in the area to make sure we have capacity of both transportation, sanitary, water, storm, are all coinciding with the developments in the area, but it would be on the development community for those upgrades. If there are any major upgrades that are under a DC bylaw, that would be handled under that portion, which is coming through the development charges.
Okay, appreciate that. Thanks, Gary. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Councilor McCurry.
Mayor, thank you. Good presentation. Thank you very much. Can you tell me what exception 20 is?
Through the chair to the counselor. So exception 20 just means that 20 is the number given to this exception area. Just like we have special modified policy areas, we number them so that we can reference them, similar to how we reference a bylaw. That's all that stands for.
So I don't have to memorize it.
Only if you want to.
I don't. Thank you. Now, sorry, just bear with me a second. So I asked the proponent about ground floor residential. Could you speak to why we're permitting that?
I definitely can. So the subject lands are in the special policy area of the city, which requires everything to be elevated above the 100-year floodplain. We did discuss this and circulate this to the GRCA, and they did not provide any commentary regarding this requirement. They are satisfied that the at-grade residential is sufficiently at the 100-year floodplain or higher, which is why staff are supportive.
Okay, thank you. And they're not required to provide a planting buffer, which most people my age would call a boulevard.
Through the chair to your Councillor McCreary, that planting buffer, we analyzed the requirement to remove it. This development would be giving additional right-of-way width to the city, and we would actually have a planting strip that would be in city control. They are willing to provide that enhanced landscaping in that area, but it would be under city control, just not necessarily on private property.
Okay. We have a requirement for wind tunnel testing.
Through the chair to yourself, Councillor McCreary, that is correct. They have completed some wind tunneling reports and studies to date that have noted there are some high wind concerns along the ICOM area. We just haven't got to the point of what those details of how to mitigate those measures to date.
Okay. They probably won't have to pick up any litter inside the development. Why are we permitting 26 stories when we have a maximum building height of 8 stories?
So through the chair to the counselor, I think with respect to the proposed building heights, as you are aware, we are transitioning to a new zoning bylaw. So this is reflective of, so those height caps are reflective of our old policy framework with respect to zoning. So this, the height is very much in line with what is proposed in our official plan, which has been in effect for several years now. Our new zoning bylaw will be designed to implement the official plan, and really the existing zoning is really just not keeping up and keeping pace. It was originally drafted in 1990, where we wouldn't have anticipated a 26-story building in our lower downtown. So what you're seeing is really there's that discrepancy with our new and progressive policy framework and working with an old bylaw. It's also reflective of this development is also in line and consistent with other developments that we've seen and approved in this area. We're relatively close. So we're looking at stories of about 22, 24 stories where we've seen and we've recommended approval in those states as well.
So should we change the 8-story limit in this document then?
There's no need to change the 8-story limit. That is our current zoning bylaw. Planning staff are anticipating bringing a new zoning bylaw before this council in June that will have much higher height maximums that can be assessed whether or not it's appropriate to go higher through specific applications.
Are we requiring a heritage impact assessment?
So through the chair, I can speak to that. So there was an HIA that was submitted for this site. And through that assessment, it was determined that the property is not currently included in the Brantford Heritage Register and is not considered to be a cultural resource. There's no impacts to identity. And additionally, there are no impacts expected on neighboring properties as well through that HIA.
Yeah, I would think that's reasonable.
Sorry, I'm going to have to interrupt again. We've gone beyond 10 minutes. Can I have Councillor Carpenter, Councillor Van Tilburg, any discussion extending 10 minutes? 10 minutes, all right. Please take the vote on that.
The motion to waive the rules carries on a recorded vote of 6-0. Those voting in favor, Mayor Davis, Councillor Sokoli, Sless, McCreary, Carpenter, Van Tilburg.
Go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I just wanted to say, I don't really see a need for any additional heritage impact assessment. You're gonna have a big development next to an all railway station, and I think that's pretty much what the impact will be. Now, I hate to always pick on the climate and environmental implications, but I can't resist. So there are no direct municipal climate and environmental applications that can be assessed at this time respecting the application. Can we not anticipate that there will be an immense production of concrete and asphalt, and there will be an immense volume of truck traffic, and there will be a resulting greater placing of whatever you want to call it into the atmosphere as a result of this development? Is that not something that we should be citing?
Through the chair to the councillor, with respect to climate impacts, I think we need to recognize that development by its very nature will have a climate impact. What we look to do is mitigate that development in the best ways that we can, and looking to achieve high density intensified uses on sites where we could see a much lower density and much sprawling type development. We're confident that while there may be some climate concerns with respect to development in general, that this is a good approach and represents an efficient use of the lands within this area.
Yes, I'd be quite happy just to strike the section 11 climate and environmental implications completely from planning applications. The impacts are obvious, but if we're not going to actually speak to the impacts, then why do it? I hate to dwell on this, but are
you coming to a question?
Sorry? Yes, I'm preambling like the other councillors did.
All right.
I am coming to a question.
Good.
Yes,
I'm glad
thank
to
you.
hear that.
Thank you. Preamble. Mayor.
I hate to cut you off.
Yes, no, I don't believe that for a second, actually. So why do we speak to what could be on that site if we're not going to speak to what's going to be on that site? We always want to talk about what would happen if we had to create that on a greenfield site, a single family dwelling. So that's not before us. What's before us is a big development that's going to have a climate impact. We don't talk to that, but we talk about the what could be. And I've already snuck that in, so I don't need to ask the question.
Guess you answered it
Thank you.
yourself.
Thank you, staff. Yes.
All right, Councillor Carpenter.
Yeah. Sometimes different rules for different folks. I'll answer the climate question. Why did we not suggest here under that section that Councilor McCurry is talking about? The fact this is a positive impact on the climate because with how much land this would take up if this was in residential single unit developments and single unit or single story commercial developments, how much land it would take up. I would suggest this probably as a benefit to climate change in our climate action plan that we're building up, not out.
Through the chair to the counselor, that's correct. I think when we're looking at development within our urban boundary, our goal is in terms of growth management and land development and land management is to intensify where feasible and possible, to move away from more, low density type uses where we could support intensification. So you're right in the sense that I think that this is a good use and efficient use of these lands, and we're able to maximize this site in order to achieve a high number of units.
Yeah, thank you. So in future, when we see developments where we're going up, and I'm glad that the new official plan is going to be coming forward. And you said July, did you not? Or June,
The new zoning bylaw will be coming forward in June.
which brings the heights up and brings us in the modern age of having up, not out, which is a climate improvement. Is it
That's
not?
correct. It is a climate
Okay,
strategy.
Further to that, then the questions about, there's five actually accesses to this site now. Well, each of those sites will make sure we have plenty of egress lanes to get in, so it's not backing into the regular traffic flow, i.e. Icom Drive, Clarence Street South, Erie Ave, or Market Street.
Through the chair to Councillor Carpenter, that is the idea. We still haven't gone through those details of what those lanes look like. We are still needing that review when the site plans come in.
Keep in mind that on the site, there's ample loading zones for all these commercial developments as well.
Through the chair to Councillor Carpenter, yes, they've provided loading zones for different areas, and we haven't reviewed their truck turning movements in great detail, but that would be a part of that site plan stage.
So I would encourage you that when you're looking at the 5 access points for loading zones, since it's going to have loading zones, I'd like to see that we actually have loading zones that are at least the length of a transport. That your intention? So at least if there's a transport making delivery, it's completely off the main roads, not impeding traffic.
Through the chair, that is correct.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Van Tilburg.
Yes, it's been described that the parking is a standard parking concerns. Is there another vibrant economic hub of a plaza and where we've had such a transition going from automotive to pedestrian that we've done before that makes it standard, or is this actually something completely new?
Through the chair to Councillor Van Tilburg, this is fairly new, this type of concept for the city of Brantford. We did base some of our parking review numbers on adjacent properties that have been approved for the residential portion. But a combined multi-use site like this would be a newer site for Brantford.
So there is a significant difference in that the other proposals that I've approved, encouraged, advanced, haven't had a strong, vibrant commercial hub happening under them. They've actually been more properties that have needed that intensification and have been underutilized. So what have you done to address the fact that this is a vibrant hub in your dealings with the proponent in making sure that the needs of the communities are being served?
Through the chair to the counselor, sorry, do you mind repeating the question?
Yes, how is it that this proposal, which seems to meet all of our other standard, I would call that what's involved in this is standard, what we do for all the other developments. But this is a development on a vibrant economic hub with significant traffic levels, parking being used constantly, such as the Fresco. So what is in this proposal that that you've done that is different than, that addresses that? Because we've just expressed that it's new. So what have we done to address the needs? The community is asking me really straightforward question. I wish to still be able to have access and parking to go and do my shopping. And it doesn't appear that it's here. So, because it meets the standards of the others. In other words, this is a big transition and people want to be reassured that they can continue to do business, keep things vibrant as they have access to all those commercial entities and the new ones being proposed. What's in there for us?
Through the chair to the counselor. Thank you for repeating the question. So really what we're talking about is mitigation from where we are today to transition to what we hope will be a vibrant new scale of development within our lower downtown. So I think we do need to recognize that we are at the zoning stage of this project, and there is a lot of work that needs to continue with the developer as well as their technical team. I think some of the concerns that we've heard from the community is as you've said, they want to be able, and they want the reassurance that they can continue to use this plaza today throughout the construction as well as into the future when it ultimately does redevelop. I think what we've heard from the applicants here today is they've put together a very robust transition and phasing plan to phase development so that there can be opportunity to continue to see commercial uses operating on the site. Much of that will come through a detailed construction and management plan that will continue to work with the developers on that as we move forward through to the next phases of development approval. So particularly when we're looking at the phase site plan approach, we will continue to work with the ward councilors to ensure that concerns that we hear today are addressed, but also concerns that may arise, because as we've also heard from the developer, this is a multi-phase, multi-year project. So there will be concerns that will be ongoing throughout that. So I think with respect to the zoning, the zoning isn't a process by which we get into a lot of those sort of technical concerns, but it really comes down to that pre-construction and management and mitigation strategy that we'll work with the development community. And a lot of those concerns will need to be brought up and addressed through the site plan process as well.
Thank you very much.
So I'd like to squeak a question in before we get to the 10 minutes. And this would go, I think, to perhaps Gary, maybe. It has to do with traffic. And some of the residents expressed concern about traffic. And I assume there was a traffic study done. And what does that traffic study tell us?
Through the chair to yourself, Councilor, going to have Jeff Cornwell, Project Manager of Transportation Development, come up to answer that.
Through the chair, Jeff Cornwell, Project Manager, Development Transportation. As part of the TIS, they did an existing analysis of the site, existing traffic. They did a parking study to try to figure out what the existing parking utilization was. And through the new study, they looked at the redevelopment, the different uses. A big chunk of the residential is also considered to be student housing, which we do have as part of our zoning amendment, reducing the student parking and the student trips to zero, assuming that those student trips have an agreement to use the parkade. So that is a big chunk of the parking reduction. As far as the trips, the overall plaza is estimated to have about 1,000 trips in a weekday morning, about 1,650 in a weekday afternoon, and about 1,700 on a weekend during the peak hours.
How does that compare to what the traffic currently is?
Currently, the plaza has 550-ish parking spaces, and it sees around 700 in the peak hour on a weekday or a Saturday. Then we made sure that during the counts, we did not include any dates that included Bulldogs games.
And what's the capacity of the neighboring road systems?
So through the TIS, we do see there are some increased levels of congestion along Clarence Street, but this site does have a lot of redundancy as it has access to 3 municipal arterial roads. So we do expect the traffic to divert a little bit to Market Street, which is generally underused, as well as ICOM Drive.
All right, I think that comes, oh, you're going to have to put forward a resolution to extend the time, Councilor McCreary. Okay. Thank you very much, Tasha, for the staff presentation. All right. So we're now at that stage of the public hearing where we look for the public to comment on the application either in support of or opposition. We have had a number of emails that came into the city clerk's office, planning office. Those emails have been distributed to committee members. Do we have anyone that's registered virtually, Lisa?
There are no virtual attendees and no virtual registrants.
Okay, so I'm going to ask, is there any member of the public who's present today in or about the chamber that would like to speak to this application, either in support of or in opposition to? Now is your opportunity to come forward and address the committee. Yes, sir, please come forward. So we'll turn the microphone on for you. We need you to state your name and your address, and then you'll have 10 minutes to make your presentation. Thank you.
My name is Brian B. and I live near Clarence and Chatham at 151 Chatham Street in close to this, fairly close to this development, but not within the range of being notified of this development happening. So my information is fairly recent on this project. So, and I learned quite a bit at this presentation here this morning, but we shop at Freshco and LCBO and Beer Store and Boston Pizza and so on. And hearing that those businesses will be preserved through the development process is good news as a person that uses this plaza. I am not opposed at all to redevelopment or change of use here. It's certainly required for this site. But we do have to consider what is appropriate for Brantford and the site. Really, how will the new residents and businesses be served by this development? And how well does it relate to the community? So looking at the renderings and the models and some of the information, what really comes to mind is fortress, and not a very inviting development. In spite of what was said, the exterior walls and height and density seem quite foreboding. Approaching the site looked confusing. I'd ask questions of, as I was approaching the site, where will I park if I'm driving, and even walking, where will the access to the site be? And it seems like the density and massing of the site will actually hide a lot of businesses. So how will I actually find some of the businesses within the site? The description of this development sounds very much like proposals for transit-oriented development in other areas. It sounds more like a development that's suitable for the Burlington GO station, or for a downtown Toronto site where streetcars and subways are close by. As a transit-oriented type development, what's missing from this is transit, and we're depending on people driving their cars and walking instead of having that access to public transit of subways and GO trains, streetcars. So I've heard some of the discussion this morning about the issues around parking and traffic, and certainly those issues, if we're going to develop at this kind of density and height, those issues will certainly be present in the future without transit. And I wonder what Brantford can do providing bus transit even to the site, because I don't see any bus lanes or turnouts for buses or parking areas for buses proposed on the site. And I'd like to compare this site to a couple of other developments that I'm familiar with. One is Brightwater in Mississauga, which is at Mississauga Road and Lakeshore Road. It's on 77 acres, and its density is at 41.5 units per acre. And it's going to be home for 3,000 residents plus a component of commercial, much like this development. So it's at 41.5 units per acre. It's quite a bit less dense than this would be. I calculated 198 units per acre. I'd also like to compare it to the St. Lawrence neighborhood right in downtown Toronto. Its proposed density and commercial space is much more than what's in St. Lawrence neighborhood. It's roughly 7,500 residents on 44 acres at right in the downtown at Bay and Front Street. And I've heard some comments too about the connection to the recreational facilities, the trails and so on, and the connection to the historic downtown part of Brantford. I do quite a bit of walking through that area, and it's the walking is not as friendly as what's being made out. If you cross from ICOM and Clarence Street and try to go to, for example, the library, you end up walking across a rubble-strewn lot and no sidewalk. Certainly very rough changes in elevation. So this is really outside of the development, and I sort of wonder what the city will do to address some of these problems with the exterior of the site, so that it's more friendly. If you want to go to all the trails along the river, you have to cross through the casino parking lot and the civic center parking lot, and there's no real walkways that you're presented with or bicycle paths. You kind of have to make your way through the parking lot, and then you do end up at the nice recreational trails. I heard a little bit about heritage impact statement, but this site is fairly significant in the history of Brantford, the agricultural implement production and the canal, the railways, and there's no real I don't see any real effort to try and reference some of this history in the development. I'm not quite sure how you do that, or whether you provide an interpretation center as part of the development, or whether the developer provides an interpretation center at the local museum to reference some of that important history of the site. I haven't heard anything about capacity of other institutions, schools, hospitals, and so on, whether there would be significant impacts. I've certainly heard some rumors about the hospital being over capacity now and the length of time required to address that overcapacity would be probably longer than this development will take. Those are my main comments today. And thank you for time to.
Brian, can the clerk has asked if you could spell your surname for us, please.
It's B as in Bob, E.
That's why I thought.
Very simple spelling.
Yeah, thank you. Any questions for Mr. B? Councillor Van Tilbrook.
Yes, have you submitted your paperwork to the clerk? Because I would like to have a copy, and I'm sure all the other councillors would like to see what you've written.
I tried to send an email to I didn't send it to the clerk. I sent it to the planner, but I can certainly provide it to the clerk's office.
And can I ask how you got wind of the planning meeting? I'm assuming you missed the first two public meetings because you were not in that catchment area.
I did, and my partner was reading something on Facebook, and I had heard rumors that the Fresco Plaza was being redeveloped, but didn't realize the scale and extent of the developments being proposed. So,
oh, thank you very much for coming this morning and giving us your time.
thank you.
Yes, Mr. B, thank you very much. We appreciate you taking the time to come in and provide us with your opinion and input. So is there any other member of the public who's present today that would like to speak to this matter, this application, either in support of the application or in opposition to, or just generally to comment? Now is the time for you to come forward. I'll ask a second time, is there any member of the public who is present today that would like to speak to this application, either in opposition to or in support? Now is your opportunity to come forward. I'm going to ask for the third and last time. Is there any member of the public who is present today, either in the front row or the back row, or even just outside the door, that would like to speak to this application, either in support of it or in opposition to it? Now is your last chance to come forward. Okay. Well, again, thank you very much, Mr. B, for coming forward. So now to the applicant, you have, if you wish, up to 5 minutes to. This is by way of a reply, and it's responding to any questions or concerns that came up through the application or the hearing. Now's your chance.
I just wanted to expand on the environmental climate concerns that came up. In terms of from the construction side, we will be registered through one of the agencies, whether it's LEEDs, Green Globes, to get certified through them. And one of the requirements will be, how do we mitigate during construction through recycling, reusing, and that kind of stuff. So when we get to that point, we will be mitigating to the extent possible the amount of environmental problems we create on the site. The second thing that we alluded to in the past, but I wanted to expand on, is that we intend, and it's through some of the city's agencies as well, Hydro and the native community as well, to provide a district energy system for this site. And our goal at the end of it will be to be carbon neutral and net zero. So carbon neutral means that we will not be using any fossil fuels to fund this or to run this project. And net zero, which is a more difficult task, but we intend to be there by the time phase 3 rolls around with the new technologies coming up, that we will produce all the energy we need on site and not have to rely on the grid. So that's our goal for this project.
Councilor Carpenter.
Well, you really are going to be leading edge, making everybody meet your standards. I appreciate that. The question came up about heritage from a constituent. The interior streets, A, B, and C, they're going to be owned by yourselves, or because you're going to maintain all the ground floor ownership?
Yes, that's correct.
So it'd be separate. The condominium corporations won't be part of their charges for maintenance.
Well, it's a combination of everybody, because it'll be retail and the condo. So in their fee, there's a reserve fund put aside for all the exterior works that are common elements.
Okay, will there be any retail condominium opportunities?
We haven't addressed that yet, but
Okay, something to
possibly.
consider. We don't have much of those here now on frontage, and it might be a new opportunity. And the issue that came up with Street A, maybe you could name Street A and Street B and Street C, Corin Watrous Way, Massey Harrison Lane, or something to deal with the heritage aspect so that people would never forget what was always in that area. Just an opportunity.
No, absolutely. One of my models I came up with initially was that we are going to respect the past and build for the future. And that's very much in our thing. We'll be discussing things with the city, heritage, about those kinds of issues. And even the tower that we intend to put at the far one corner, we're going to engage both the city and indigenous community as to what that would look like to respect the heritage of the past and going into the future.
Wow, looking forward to a new standard in our community. Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Rosetto, we heard from Mr. B, and he talked about, I think the words were kind of a formidable presence. And I think his concern is similar to those who saw what happened with the Eaton Market Square development here, 40 years ago. And certainly that is a development that's very inward focused. And on the outside, it's barren walls, right? In some ways, in some features of it. So can you assure us, what are you going to be doing with this development that will not create that impression or that kind of a look or that kind of a presence?
Through the chair, it really comes down to the sort of way that the project is massed and the materials that are used. Again, we really drew on the precedent that we see elsewhere within the downtown. So if we walk down the street here outside the building, we do see a sort of sawtoothed line to the roof lines. We see a number of different street facades sort of lined up. It doesn't feel imposing because of that variability, that change in the pattern and the materials, and that ability, that sawtooth ability to allow for light to get down into the street. And so we've really tried to replicate that within this development. And while the internal streets, represent something that's different than what's on site currently, again, they're meant to replicate an urban form. So you walk into the development, it mimics an urban street. And then as you move a half a block in, it opens up into this central plaza, which will be activated and kept vibrant. And so the idea is to really sort of draw in, utilizing both the architecture and signage to ensure that people going by understand that there are businesses. The businesses will wrap into the outside, again, to give all sorts of visual cues to residents to invite them in and replicate some of that form that we see elsewhere in the downtown.
Thank you. Councillor Kerr, we have time for one more question unless we have a time extension, but I think you said you wanted to ask a question.
I do, and I'll ask one omnibus question. Could you tell me, first of all, what happens in the Central Plaza, what you anticipate the first phase rent range will be? And could you compare and contrast your development in the city of Brantford with what happened in St. Jamestown years ago?
I'll answer 1 and 3, and I'll hand 2 over to my client. In terms of what happened to St. Jamestown, I think I don't know that I would consider that to be a sort of an apt sort of comparison. St. Jamestown was the redevelopment of a number of Victorian buildings with a range of towers across the neighborhood, without much thinking about what the public realm wanted to be. It was really just about an insertion of towers. That said, St. Jamestown today is a vital part of, I assume you mean St. Jamestown in Toronto?
Yes,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
referencing the St. Jamestown, not of today, but of the first 30 years.
Yeah. And so I would say that it was indicative of mid-century planning where the idea of density was the primary driver without a consideration around public space. This is not that. And sorry, now I've lost your first question, which was?
Central Plaza and rent.
Oh, Central Plaza. So the Central Plaza, we haven't decided what the specifics on that haven't been identified yet. But the broad strokes are there. So the intent is that Central Plaza on a regular day, allows for patios from the adjacent restaurants to spill out, that allows for space for people to sit and enjoy even if they're not shopping. It provides space for buskers, activities. Potentially there's some engaging spaces for children. My children have played in a splash pad that in a similar development in the West Coast when they were younger. And so all of those things would occur. We've also designed those central roadways to support opportunities for them to be closed at various times to allow for that central square to expand out for special festivals, for, sort of extensions to the farmer's market, all sorts of different things. The intent is that they be very flexible, programmed and very vibrant.
In terms of rents, everybody on this site has got current rents, and the larger ones have long-term rents. Freshco,
Sorry, I meant just the residential component.
in terms of rent, the rent for the rent for residential. We haven't addressed that at this point. We don't know what it's going to look like until we get to that stage. But back to the other question, they are also part of the attainable program as well. So there'll be some of that going on as well.
All right, so we're gonna have to cut it off at that point. Not seeing any motion to extend. So that means the public meeting is now closed and we'll move into the debate and decision. And because we've been going almost 2 hours, I think it's important we give staff a bit of a break. So we're going to take a 10-minute break, but I'm going to ask staff if you would please share on the screen what the suggested resolution is that will be put on the floor when we come back. And so we'll reconvene at 11:15. So we're about to reconvene. Yeah, we do have quorum, three's quorum. So we're going to reconvene, and we're now moving into the debate and discussion phase regarding the first item. So I'm going to ask, we've had the proposed resolution provided to us by staff. It's been on the screen now for a few minutes. Councillor Carpenter, you indicating you would like to move this resolution. Do we have a seconder?
I'd like to move the resolution, yes, seeking a second.
Thank you. And Councillor McCurry is seconding it. So the floor is now open for debate.
Can I speak to it?
Yes, go ahead, Councillor
Um,
Carpenter.
This development is transformational for our community. It's one of a kind. We've never seen such a upscale, intense development like this. I'm sure glad we've removed the height limits to allow 25 stories. It's going to make the difference in our community. We've been trying to get downtown Brantford in the lower downtown successful for many years, spending lots of taxpayers' money to find out that government involvement was never successful. The only way to make downtown successful is by putting people there, living there, putting commercial activity down there, making a place where people want to be. When we talked about bus transit services, we can put transit services in front of the Civic Center, and there's room there to put bus pullover lanes there to access this development as well. So it would be in what is the least impacted street for traffic. So that would get the walking and the ability for people to walk to this development. And this will, the future of malls, and America's done this as well, has been that you build high-rise development attached to commercial, and that makes the commercial very successful because there's enough people living there to keep the base, and then the rest draws in from outside. So yeah, this is the future of commercial development in our city. This will change our downtown significantly, and not only our downtown. I've been working very diligently to try and get the old hotels on Corbett Street East redeveloped into high density, and this will set the standard. Zero emission that you're doing. The extras that you're going to that isn't required, that you're doing on purpose because of the integrity that you want your business and your company to be represented, is welcome in this community. We hear a lot from development industry when they come to us and they present a development proposal, and then we see the building gets built and it's something different. I'm very confident with our planning staff and to the ward councilors, they'll make sure that the consultation and the work that you've talked about will be done the way you want to do it and the way they see it working within the community. So I'm very pleased to see this intensification in our community. This is something that will also prevent outward growth, urban sprawl. This is a benefit to our downtown and a benefit to the community. Now, one final saying, Mr. Mayor, one of my mentors was a fellow named Roy Guscott. He taught me in politics early on when I was on the Public Utilities Commission. Roy Guscott was an Eagle Place fan. He always said, "You're not a Brantfordian unless you've lived in Eagle Place." And he was a deacon of Park Baptist or Wesley Street, Wesley United Church. But he always said, and I lived in Eagle Place many years of my life, and this is considered Eagle Place for the Eagle Place residents. And they're not used to such drastic change. So I understand the concerns that they would have, but this is bringing them into the, providing services for them. It's just adjusting to how you access those services, which is the modern technology that we're moving to today. So, and new people are moving into Eagle Place all the time because it's more affordable, and it's changing dramatically. And we're going to change Eagle Place and Mohawk Street and the canal as well. Eagle Place is being reborn. This is part of it as I see it. I just want to thank you for such a forward-thinking development. This is really transformational for our community and to our planning staff that did such yeoman's work with you on this. You've already said how great they are. I've always known that about our planning staff, and it's good to hear it from you. And they do terrific work. I'm just so pleased that this is going to be a development sooner the better. Hopefully the economy doesn't change, interest rates don't go up, inflation doesn't hit us again with oil prices going around the world, and you can move forward with your development on a financial, without any significant financial impact delaying you. Sooner you get this done, the happier we'll be. Thank you.
Councillor Sikora.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's certainly been at the forefront of discussions as of lately, council's sort of vision for that lower bowl area for the entertainment district, kind of vibe that we're trying to create there. And here we have someone in the private sector who's looking to invest, I believe the number thrown around was $1.5 billion into moving us towards enhancing that feel and that vision for that area. So I really like what's being presented here today. I like that there's a mix of housing styles. It's not all apartments. I like that there's townhouses on site. I like the parkades. I like everything that you've done here. I do have some concern with parking, but I just think that's surely comes from the fact that it's different. And people will get used to it on site. They just need some time to adjust to that. I like that you have ownership and you have rentals, and I don't know if people realize how many international students we have here in the downtown core. There's a huge need for housing. And this is exactly a place where I could see, especially international students who are on foot most of the time. I could see them landing in an area like this. I really like what you've done with the fact that there's kind of streets and then it opens up, and it kind of gave me like a European vibe. I'm Italian, so you're kind of in these like little dark alleys and then it opens up to a piazza, right? And I kind of like that. I could see us using that. I hope that you take some of the suggestions that we've lent here today and you really make sure that those are incorporated into the design. We do know that the Bulldogs are going to be here probably for a little bit, and there's going to be a parking thing. So I look forward to seeing how you choose to navigate that, but you will be getting my support here today to move forward. So thank you for your investing your dollars into our community and to help move us towards our goals downtown. Thank you.
Next, Councillor McCrory.
Mayor, thank you. I'll be supporting this as well. I think it speaks to all the planning issues that we have before us. It satisfies all the planning requirements. I have some trepidation because I've lived in Toronto and I've seen the impact of high-rise density in adjacent neighborhoods. But I've also seen that these folks seem ready and able to create a community here as opposed to just a bunch of tall buildings with folks living in them. And I think that I've developed some degree of familiarity with the proponent, and I have faith that they'll produce a good product and a good community here. It's a bit of a sticker shock for Brantfordians who haven't seen high-rise building construction downtown since about 1969. And on the subject of downtown, this does recreate a downtown district. Our downtown died for many reasons, one of which was the fact that nobody lived there anymore. And this will create something of a catalyst, something of a critical mass that's going to attract additional investment. By the way, one of my colleagues said something about the Bulldogs being here for a little while. Bulldogs are going to be here forever. And you better just deal with your parking problem because we don't care about that. It's your problem, right? Councillor Carpenter mentioned this helping us resolve our requirements thrust upon us from other levels of government to provide housing, and interesting how the other levels of government give us problems to solve but don't help us out. And this will prevent, at least within the current confines of the city of Brantford, maybe not the later confines when we become Brantford Brant at some point, but we will be able to do our part in terms of providing opportunity to live in the city of Brantford so they don't have to gobble up farmland that feeds families. So I do support it. I hope you'll continue to be diligent with respect to making sure that it doesn't create any problems on the site, that you create a great community, create a great living environment, shopping environment, And I like the fact that you spoke to the central hub being a place where you can invite life into that community on the street. And I hope that you'll be able to advance this quickly. And what I've heard is that you're not going to be able to, or rather that your intention is not to inhibit the folks of Eagle Place from being able to buy groceries, beer, and liquor, which of course is important. Thank you.
Councillor Celeste.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to say thank you, first of all, in showing the confidence in our community that we have, but we're sharing it with the outside world. And I'd like to say thank you. It's kind of staggering, $1.5 billion being spent in our community to create things that people need and can use in our community. And for that, I say thank you. To me, this is kind of a coming out. I think the city is growing up today. It's kind of a celebration. I think we're entering a new era. And I've been saying that all along when we've talked about an arts or a sports and entertainment center right adjacent to this development. We're not living in 1980 anymore in our community. It's 2024 and things look different today. And I know change is hard for a lot of people. Nobody really likes their life disrupted. We can just go on and things shouldn't change and we just go through life that way. But that's not reality. The world changes, things change, needs change. The demand for things from the community changes as our community changes. We're becoming a very diverse community, which we hadn't been for a very long time. And there's just a lot of adjusting and a lot of growing up happening in our community. And for those that look a lot like me as far as age, change is hard. You know, you struggle with it because you're used to things being a certain way. And when somebody comes in and changes that, your whole life seems to be in an uproar and you've got to get used to a whole new way of living again. But that's life. And that's the evolution of a city becoming a village up to a city, up to becoming a more major city. And that we've become. So besides our finance department just salivating at the assessment that's being created here. And I think that speaks to the city in general, that there's a lot of things we can do with that assessment to make the rest of the city as nice as what you're creating in the area of the city that you're taking care of with this development. So I'm pleased to support this, Mr. Mayor. I think it's something that is, I think Councillor Carpenter said earlier, you're setting a standard for future development in our community. And I think it's being set by a very solid company that's going to do a very, very good job and create something that others can aspire to. So again, thank you for the faith in our community. We appreciate it. And I think you said earlier in our discussions before the meeting started that you probably wouldn't get a shovel in the ground till 25 with the state of affairs in the world, I guess, finances. But 25 is not very far away. So it'll be coming very quickly. And I'm sure there's a lot of things that have to get tidied up before you ever get a shovel in the ground anyway. So we're probably not being held up at all by the financial situation of the world. So good luck. We look forward to seeing it and we'll drive by it at every Bulldog game. So good luck and thanks and welcome to the community.
Councillor Van Tilburg, you're next.
Well, I think the community needs to understand that it's not the city that owns that piece of property. And often there's that misnomer that this is us and us doing this. The proponents own the property. The proponents are putting $1.5 billion to do what they wish to do on their property. If you listen to the other councillors, this is an incredible transformation for our city. And in fact, it is. I have actually advocated for 6 other buildings of similar size and style within eyesight and across the road and around the corner from this development. Also, Councillor Samwell and myself were in the upper downtown, I guess if we're going to use those terms, with regards to a 19-story apartment building coming up in multiple phases. Again, virtually no opposition to those developments. Brantford's ready for change. Welcomes change. We've been told to build up, not out. We've been told to handle these things. When we talk about the climate and the changes in the effect, this is the kind of development that does it. So then you're going to wonder why I'm going to vote not in favor of this development. Because it's how we handle the change, what that change impacts, who benefits, who doesn't benefit. Are we allowing everybody in or are we allowing everybody out? Or can we make it work for everyone? And I believe I have to be that voice of the community that says, we want in. And that's the absolute truth. They're actually not saying no. They're saying, we're there now, we shop now, this is so important to us. They come out for multiple meetings, they state what they wish to see. And I don't think we're there yet. I think I've got the open ear. I think I'm hearing from staff through the site plan, but I have to make my decisions right now prior to having the foresight to know that that will all work out. Do I know when I visit the commercial units to do business with, they actually have similar concerns. They don't know about how that transformation will work, whether they'll survive. I think they all know that once they make that transition, there is an instant consumer right there ready for them. But right now, every consumer that they have is not local because we don't have, as has been very well mentioned, people living downtown. So this addresses that. And I think that's very important. We need this, but we really, I do not wish to ignore all those community members who've come out, packed rooms and audiences. This is just not a standard parking and traffic issue. I also want to state that the city has to step up. And I think we're going to do that this evening. There is a transit moving forward plan. And if something like this kind of development doesn't give us a kick in the butt to improve our transit system, I think the developers have heard our transit deficiencies in this community. They have a progressive, high density proposal. I've been stating to them, we aren't there as a city. Other cities are. People move to this community. They expect a proper transit system. And I'll tell you what, they don't see it. We're not there. We have to move in joint when the development comes in like this. So if you're a councillor supporting this, you're going to have to back our transit plans. You're going to have to do what needs to be done, and we have to do it now. We can't delay. Because as it said, we're not in 1980 anymore. But having seen all the missing pieces, I can only advocate that we fix those missing pieces, that we make those connections with the public to make sure that we can all win from this, that we can all benefit from this. For me, if this development had not happened on what has been a long-awaited, vibrant economic hub for a community that didn't have an economic hub, was lost in the wilderness when we cut them off for almost 20 years, and now this has been their place. If it hadn't affected that, I would be jumping up and down for this, but I have to follow those concerns. How long they waited, how long, the only vibrant area, since we're calling Upper Eagle Place the lower downtown, it's the only vibrant area of our downtown. So it's going to be very overstimulated and we have to address it. So I'm getting the signal to call it a day. So I will. I think I've said my piece. Thank you, Chair and Mayor. You've done an excellent job.
Well, I get to say a few words. I'll time myself. Unprecedented, transformative, revitalizing, invigorating. I'm trying to think of grab bag of adjectives, verbs, nouns, but I think words alone can't quite capture what this development means for our community. It truly is a transformative development proposal, the likes of which we haven't seen here. And I understand the concerns of many in the community. Can we handle this? Can we work together with this builder and developer and make it a success? Are we ready for this? Can Brantford do this? And I'd say, yes, we can. We can go back 200 years in our history, back to when Brantford was a village and you forded across the river. There's a collection of businesses and homes. And there was a proposal to build a bridge where the Lorne Bridge is. And there was a lot of opposition. The opposition was that the increase in traffic, carriage traffic, would overwhelm the village. Wasn't ready for it. Well, times proved we were ready for it because this community does respond, it does adapt like any other community that's growing. And I'm confident that yes, this will come, there are growing pains associated with this. And yes, the city will have to respond appropriately. But I think the outcome will be 10 years from now. Think of the vision. Think of that part of our community, which really has been in many ways neglected. It was once the industrial heartland of our community. And for the last several decades, other than a prosperous shopping plaza, it probably has lived, it hasn't reached its potential, hasn't even attained any part of its great potential. And so think of what we're going to have down there. We're going to have an area that I suspect will be one of the most attractive areas of Southwestern Ontario to live. We're going to have a very vital commercial development and incorporated within it student housing, student programs. We're going to have attainable, affordable housing along with other types of condominium housing. Across the street, we're going to have some kind of sports entertainment center, a casino, a library, a Sanderson Center, a river, bike trail system, a really unique and charming residential area to the south called Eagle Place. It'll be amazing. And I truly believe this will be the spark, the catalyst to really, truly transform that important part of our community, what was at the beginning of our community, our heart. And it hasn't been a strong beating heart for some time, and I'm confident it will be. But no question, it's challenging for the owner to move forward with the plans and be able to finance it and to be able to realize on the vision that you have. But I'd say this, I think you have a city council, I'm sure in the future as well, will be there to support and assist, to deal with the concerns of residents and to make this project work for the owners and also for our city. I just hope I'm here 15, 20 years from now just to see what truly unfolds. And it'll be grand is the word I think I would use. And really introducing our community to the 21st century. That's what this is. So with that, unless there's any other speakers, I'm going to call the question.
Item 4.1 carries on a recorded vote of 5-1. Those voting in favor, Mayor Davis, Councillor Sokoli, Sless, McCreary, Carpenter. Those opposed, Councillor Van Tilburg.
All right, we're going to move now into item 4.2. And that is zoning bylaw amendment PZ 0622 and draft plan of subdivision 29T 22501. It's in relation to 297 Erie Ave and 339 Erie Avenue. So I'm now going to call up the applicant. In regards to this particular application, I see you've already come forward. So would you please state your name, provide us with your address, and confirm that you're either the applicant or representing the applicant. And then you'll have 10 minutes to make your presentation inclusive of any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the public, and members of the committee. My name is Jonabel Serimuga. I am the planner from Corbett Land Strategies, and I am here today to represent the Multani Homes, our client, on the proposed residential development on the subject lands known as 297 and 339 Ely Avenue. I am also joined by our project team, Bob Phillips from Cohoon Engineering and Jeremy Jackson, our arborist consultant, who will be addressing your questions regarding civil matters and arborist matters, and also Rob Multani and AJ Kushik from Multani Homes as well. Next slide, please. So for today's presentation, I am pleased to present the details of our proposed zoning bylaw amendment to facilitate the proposed residential located in the special policy 2 area in the city of Brantford. As mentioned, it's known as 297 Erie Avenue and 339 Erie Avenue. Next slide, please. As shown on this location map, the white outline is the one that is identified as the special policy area 2 by the city of Brantford, and the one that's outlined in red are our properties within that policy area. It has a total site area of 3.8 hectares. 339 Erie Avenue has 2.72 hectares, and 297 Erie Avenue, which we also refer to as 297 Dover Avenue, is 1.08 hectares. And currently the property is vacant. The site is located, as you can see here, just north of Burkett Lane. It's west of Erie Avenue and south of Baldwin Avenue, and it's characterized by just grassy lands and as well as wooded area. Next slide, please. So just a little bit of a background. The client is one of the landowners of the SBA2 landowner group, which shares the responsibility for completing a comprehensive stormwater management report, which is required prior to the development of the overall lands. The landowner, the GRCA and the city have entered into a contribution and indemnity agreement to complete the required work. The SBA2 report was approved by the GRCA on November 27, 2020, and the City of Brantford Council on February 23, 2021. The group completed area-wide studies on land use, transportation, and servicing to ensure a cohesive development of the SBA2 area. For today, there's 2 separate applications that we are advancing for each of the properties. So we have 297 Erie or Dover is being advanced separately to deliver the Dover Avenue extension from the existing cul-de-sac. And it also has been coordinated with the lands to the south and the west. And 339 Erie is also being advanced to achieve slightly higher intensification in keeping with the city OB policies, and as being planned as a draft condominium plan and is considered one lot for the purposes of the ZBA. Next slide, please. So here are the list of efforts that we have advanced through by the SBA2 landowners. So that includes the master servicing plan, the transportation plan, and I'm not going to mention all the rest, but those are the key major items that we have to make sure that we're completed in order for the development of the SBA2 lands. Next slide, please. So this is the 297 Erie Avenue. We are proposing to develop a total of 37 street townhouses dwelling, which will front a new public street and Dover Avenue, and it has a units per hectare of 34.3 and a parking spaces of rate of 1 space per unit, which totals to 37 spaces. Next slide, please. For 339 Erie Avenue, we are proposing to develop a total of 131 units. It will comprise of 75 traditional block townhouses and 56 back-to-back townhouses in a condo block. We have street townhouses and back-to-back, and it has 49 units per hectare. We are proposing a parking rate of 1.46 per unit, which totals to 191 spaces. Next slide, please. So in terms of the planning policy, we have reviewed the proposed residential against the PPS, the growth plan, City of Brantford official plan, and also the waterfront master plan. And it was concluded that they're all the proposed development is in conformance with all of the provincial and municipal policies. Next slide, please. As for the zoning, so the existing zone right now for both of the properties is currently already residential medium density, which we are providing. It has a holding provision as well, which is applied to the subject lands and requires that the subject lands obtain permits from the Grand River Conservation Authority, and that is the F prefix of the zoning. Next slide, please. So we are in keeping with the medium density residential proposal, and we are requesting for a minor amendment to the zoning standards just to permit for site specifics for lot area, lot width, coverage, building height, and exterior side yard. And also for the 339 Erie, it's it's the same, except that we are also asking for amendment to the landscape, open space, parking, and amenity space as well. Next slide, please. So here's the site-specific proposed for 297 Erie Avenue. As you can see here, they're very minimal in changes just to make sure that we are facilitating the proposed street townhouses. Next slide, please. And for 339 Erie Avenue, similarly, they're very minor in our opinion in terms of amendment to the zoning bylaw standard. Next slide, please. So there is a draft plan of subdivision that will be presented to the planning committee at a later date, following further consideration of the technical matters. There's also a site plan control that was filed for this application as well, which will also be made at a later date. The removal of the holding provision is subject to the following conditions. So that would be the satisfaction with the servicing issues and financial matters, an approved comprehensive stormwater management strategy by the engineering department and also the GRCA, a draft plan approval with a condition requiring the conveyance of necessary buffer blocks right of ways, specifically for 297 Erie Avenue only, a functional servicing report that is accepted by the engineering department and the GRCA. The applicant consults with the survivor secretary to ensure that lands have been evaluated to the satisfaction of the city. And lastly, that the applicant submit an updated tree inventory and protection plan report specifically for 339 Erie Avenue. Next slide, please. So in conclusion, the application is consistent with the PPS, the current 2020 PPS, and conforms to the 2020 growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe. The proposed zoning bylaw amendment conforms to the Bradford official plan. It will provide for efficient use of land, services, and infrastructure. It will contribute to the city's housing supply, and the zoning bylaw only seeks minor modifications to the permitted standards. The zoning will deliver a range of residential types and forms of housing that will support the city of Brantford growth, population growth. The zoning that has been prepared, extensive planning and technical assessment to ensure that matters such as storm servicing and transportation have been planned comprehensively and integrated, and that the proposed holding provision has been found to be appropriate. And lastly, that the proposed zoning represents good planning and should be considered for approval. That is all for today. Thank you.
Councilor Carpenter.
Thank you. Looking at the Erie Avenue development site, streets A through to E, who will own those streets?
I will call our client to answer that question as they're more aware of that.
Okay, Rob.
Hi there, I'm Rob Multani. What was the
The
question?
question
What
is,
street?
streets A through to E, who will own those streets within the development site?
Okay, yeah, so I believe one street that's straddling the dike there, that's gonna be a municipal street.
Is that street A?
I believe it is Street A, yes. And then the rest of the streets will be for our development will be owned, it's a condominium, so it'll be privately owned.
So and the streets on front of street A, they will not be condominiums.
Yeah, so those are the other developers. I believe it's Live and Cache, so it's a mix of municipal and condominium streets.
Okay, there's a walkway 2/3 down street A. It doesn't, I don't know where it goes to. Does it just go to another site? Is there plans for that walkway, or does it go to the top of the dike? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think that street goes to the top of the dike and it may access, we have a park that's straddling our property. That's gonna be a community park. And I believe it accesses the park as well.
So the amenity spaces, are you providing 5% in lieu of parkland or you're providing parkland?
We're providing 5%.
You're, oh, the 5% funding. So hopefully staff will recognize the 5% funding. So the amenity space, is that amenity space for the condominium corporation then?
The amenity space on our property is for our condominium corporation. And then there's a park that we have access from our property to the large park that's behind our property there.
Which park is that? I don't see.
It's called a Riverwalk Park,
Just
south of our development.
Oh, I don't see that on the map anywhere. Okay, but that doesn't that backs onto, that amenity space backs onto single family homes, does it not? In this development?
No, I think you're talking about the amenity space on our property, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, that I believe backs onto single family homes.
Okay, so and that.
Sorry to interrupt, Councilor Carpenter. We've
Okay,
gone
yeah, we'll
beyond.
be back
Ken,
and let's finish up the question.
Any motion to extend? Yep. So I'll move by Councilor Carpenter, extend what, 5 minutes, 10 minutes? What do you want? 10, and second by Councilor Sless. Any discussion? Please call the vote, please.
The motion to waive the rules carries on a record vote of 6-0. Those voting in favor, Mayor Davis, Councillor Sokoli, Sless, McCurry, Carpenter, Van Tilburg.
Continue, Councilor Carpenter.
Thank you. So that amenity space will be owned by the condominium corporation. I'm just wondering if that amenity space couldn't be moved to street A. What I'm thinking about is you still have the same number of units, you just move those units over because that backs onto Doug Snook's community center. And it might be more accessible to the community center and for a flow through for traffic. And then I would also be looking through staff to look for maybe an access point off the public road, maybe to the community center as well, because the current access off Erie Ave is right next to a traffic light. It's very difficult to access, as you can see. Other than that, those are my concerns at this time. So it'll be one condominium corporation? Oh, that makes it so, let's see how it makes it so much easier when there's one instead of 3 or 4. So thank you for that. Thank you.
Any other questions? Nope. All right, thank you very much. And you, of course, will have an opportunity at the end to respond, 5 minutes to respond if necessary. So this is now the part of the planning hearing where we hear from staff, and I believe Jeff Medeiros, you're going to be making that presentation.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of Planning Committee. My name is Jeff Medeiros. I'm a senior planner with the City of Brantford. I'm here to present staff's recommendation on the subject zoning bylaw amendment applications for 297 and 339 Erie Avenue. So these are Planning Act applications. As the agent has indicated, there's also a plan of subdivision that impacts the 297 Erie Avenue. The zoning amendments itself, so both properties are already zoned for R4A, so they do permit the use. However, there are site-specific provisions that are being requested for 297, 37 townhouse units is proposed, and a total of 131 is proposed for 339 Erie Avenue. So in total, both properties are just over 2.5 hectares. The lands on the east being the larger of the two. They're vacant. They're in an area called the Special Policy Area 2. Basically, it's a flood zone policy provision that comes out of the official plan as well as provincial legislation. Just to get a little bit more into some of the specifics of the development proposal, we'll brush over these really quickly. These are freehold street townhouses. There's 37 that's proposed in total. It does include the extension of Dover Avenue South as well as of a connection to a future street that would extend west. This is the plan of subdivision. It's used as a way to create the new roadways as well as the individual lots. Staff are recommending, as you'll see in the staff report, that the plan of subdivision be brought forward at a later date, which is consistent with some of the other SPA2 files that have come forward to Planning Committee. With respect to 339 Erie Avenue, it's 131 units. The intent for this development is to be developed as a condominium, so that would be with private roadways, just to answer the committee members' questions previously. There is an active condo application as well as a site plan application for these lands. With respect to the policy framework, so this is an area that's always been envisioned for residential development. In fact, the lands on the east side, half of them, about 2/3, are within an intensification corridor. So the proposed use is very much permitted and established in the OP. So very much the build form that's been envisioned for this area. And similarly, as I said, it's in a special policy area 2. So from the zoning side of things, R4A zoning, so there still are currently there is a zoning that permits the townhouses. They're simply seeking to amend the current zoning with site-specific provisions. Being in a flooding zone, that's what the F is for. There's certain limitations as to what they can and cannot do. On the site-specific provisions with 297 Erie Avenue to deal with performance standards, lot area, lot width, building height, side yards. And similarly with the 339 Erie Avenue, it's just to amend some of the standards that have been requested by the applicant. Staff are in support of the requested provisions. On the with respect to development considerations, a comprehensive stormwater management plan has been prepared and is currently in the works with staff as they work through some of the subdivision process on the balance of the subdivisions that are proposed in this area. Similar with the Riverwalk 2 and 3 applications that came forward the committee last year. There's a number of specific provisions that are requested as part of the holding. I won't go into them too specifically, but they are identified in the staff report. With respect to the woodlot that is on 339 Erie Avenue, it is not identified in any sort of environmental protection policies in the city's official plan, but it is noted in this the city's tree bylaw. Within that bylaw, it does indicate that it can be a condition of site plan or subdivision that ultimately the city could approve the removal of those trees. That would be dealt with, like as I said, through a subdivision requirement or a site plan requirement. Those requirements have not been fully negotiated with the applicant yet. Typically, that may entail some sort of compensation, either monetary or tree replacement, which is pretty consistent with what has been approved in other developments in the city. With respect to archaeology, stage 1 and 2 has been completed. Typically with archaeology, it's normally a condition of subdivision or site plan. And as I said, with the draft plan of subdivision, at this time, staff are recommending that those conditions associated with the subdivision be brought forward at a later date. Not identified on this slide, but there had been received to date one letter from a member of the public. Some of their comments deal with traffic, home values, school board capacity, new construction activities, and Indigenous consultation. Just to speak to a couple of them, a traffic assessment was completed for the development. The school boards were circulated through the Planning Act processes. With respect to Indigenous consultation, the city has, and the developers are actively engaging with Six Nations of the Grand River and the Mississaugas on moving the subdivisions forward at a later date. So in conclusion, staff are recommending approval of the subject zoning bylaw amendments as identified in the staff report. Happy to answer any questions the committee may have. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. Councilor Carpenter.
Thanks, Jeff. Sorry about Street A that is opposite 9th Avenue, and I know there's traffic lights there. North of that, just north of that, is that privately owned? There's a house there. That's not part of this development, and that street, will the street go right by that side of that house?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So as I said in my presentation, Street A will be developed as a condominium, so it'd be a private road. That house you referred to, I believe, would not be part of this development just based on the plans that have been submitted to the city.
So the house would have the driveway for Doug Snook's Community Center on one side and this street on the other side?
Correct.
Okay. Now, the amenity space, I thought I would like to see it attached to the community center to give access to the community center, but there's also a 5% lieu in parkland. I'd like planning staff to let the ward councilors know how much that fee actually is, so they know what numbers their neighborhood is developing in parkland funding. Maybe that's future purchase of that property to add to Doug Snook's. Doug Snook's is a very active community center. I'd like to see an access point in there, another access point if it's possible. Is that something we could look at?
Your comments are noted. I just do want to acknowledge that the applications before it are just the zoning standards, and it's to deal with some of the development as proposed. However, we haven't approved a site plan application or the plan of subdivision, so there could still be opportunity to change the ultimate design and layout of the site. So we can definitely look into that.
All right, I appreciate that. Thanks for your work, Rob, or Jeff.
Councilor McCurry.
Mayor, thank you very much. Through you to staff. We are permitting a reduction in lot area from 185 to 131.
That's correct. And it's on a per unit basis.
Okay. That's described as marginal in the description, but it's 30%. Can you reconcile the difference between marginal and 30%?
Through you, Mr. Chair, with respect to lot area reductions and the terminology being marginal, it's very much a measurement of density as it relates to the lot area per unit. It's marginal in the sense that if you look at the configuration of the development, some of those lots are quite large in terms of their setbacks, but being that it's an oddly shaped property, the lot area is a reduction of what would normally be required. The 131, I would say, is consistent to what we've seen in other developments in the city.
I would suggest that we make the description match the number in all cases. 30% is not marginal. I suggest you find a different word for it. I don't have an issue with it, but it's very confusing to people reading this. We're also reducing the lot width from 6 to 5 meters. Is that simply in terms of internal streets that will not have parking in front of the units?
So the lot width requirement that's being proposed, and I'm assuming you mean 297 Erie Avenue specifically?
Page 15.
So that would be for 297. So those would be of the freehold units.
So the answer to my question would be,
Uh,
is there parking in front or not?
so there would be parking on the street there, correct?
Okay, so do you know the length of a RAV4?
I do not off the top of my head.
4.6 meters. So I could not legally park my car in front of one of those units.
So I can tell you through the development process, staff had reviewed the on-street parking requirement. Previously, the applicant was actually reducing a bit more of a reduction than 5 meters. They brought it up to 5 meters in order of meeting the on-street parking requirement that's established by the city.
So even if you're laneway to
Sorry to
laneway,
interrupt, Councilor McCurry, but we need an extension, time extension. Moved by Councilor Carpenter, 5 or 10 minutes. 10, second by Councilor Sluss. Any discussion? All those in favor? Well, you can take the vote.
oh,
Sorry.
The motion to waive the rules to permit staff an additional 10 minutes carries on a recorded vote of 6-0. Those voting in favor, Mayor Davis, Councillor Secoli, Celeste, McCreary, Carpenter, Van Tilburg.
Thank you, Mayor. And subsequent to that, is staff aware of the length of a Chevy Suburban or a Ford F-150?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I don't have the specific measurements, but I know that that's a larger SUV.
They are 5.3 and 5.5 meters in length respectively, and would fit nicely in front of a 6-meter frontage with maybe a few inches to spare. I think really we need to take note of exactly what people drive in this community, and you know, it's just creating problems. And I'm not a Ward 5 counselor, but 2 folks here are. And again, not to you know, to harp on some of these things, but landscaped open space, we're reducing from 30 to 25%. And again, that's called marginal when it's you know, 15%. And again, I don't have a problem with it, but I'd simply like our description to match what the numbers actually represent.
Question?
No, I squeezed that in before you asked for
Yeah,
a
you
question.
did. Nice.
Yes, that was, thank you. But may I say this, Mayor? Make sure you treat everybody equally in that respect.
All right. Any other questions? Yes, Councilor Carpenter.
Sorry, thank you, Mr. Mayor. One that I forgot. So the houses that are you call them lot line townhouses, I think, Jeff? Or street townhouses?
Street townhouses is a type of townhouse product that's defined in the zoning bylaw.
Yeah, where they own their own backyard and they own their own front yard.
Correct. Yeah, they're typically freeholds.
Yes. Now, how do they access their backyards?
Normally, there's access easements that would be established through either the subdivision process or it could be through part lot control.
And how do we enforce those?
Typically, it is a private matter. We enforce them by granting easements through a legal process and they're registered on title. That's as much as we can do in terms of establishing legal easements.
Yeah, because I have them on Gray Street and they have to go to court to get access to their own backyards. And we actually, will we have any sewer easements back here like we do on Gray Street?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm not aware of any, but perhaps I'll defer that to my colleague, Gary.
Through the chair, to yourself, Councillor Carpenter, no, we don't have any requirements for a sewer easement on this property, although the detailed design still has not occurred.
If we did, how would that change our ability to enforce access?
Through the chair to Councillor Carpenter, if this was an easement for city purposes or city land ownership, it would change obviously of the rights of who has on that property. But typically when it comes to the private landowners having easement rights, that would be through their own private mechanism and generally would have to go through courts if they are having issues.
And Gary, while I'm on the subject, so if there is a storm easement, or maybe not a storm easement, but there's a storm sewer that collects the water off the back lots and then deposits into our system, how is that checked for, West Nile and those things that we do on a regular basis on our own sewers, storm sewers?
Through the chair to Councillor Carpenter, I would have to get back to you on that particular item. Typically, again, if it's a private catch basin or private sewer network, the city is not involved in the requirement from a mosquito basis.
Yeah, so we wouldn't have any impact on whether the West Nile virus was being enhanced because of all these private sewer connections.
Through the chair, that'd be correct.
Oh, okay, and as access to are we meeting the number of parking requirements that where we ask for reductions here?
Through you, Mr. Chair, so keep in mind, there's 2 different sites here. They are seeking a slight reduction on the condo site to the east. So that'd be for 339 Erie Avenue, and for 226, they're maintaining the 1 space per unit requirement. So that meets the zoning bylaw.
Do we have an overage here for visitor parking? Is that excess than what's required?
So for the condo site, it's built into the minimum parking ratio. So typically with block townhouses, the minimum is 1.5. They're proposing 1.48.
And where do we see snow storage or garbage collection on these sites?
That level of detail hasn't been determined yet. Perhaps I may defer that one to the applicant if they've have a decision for that, but typically snow storage could be hauled away, could be stored on site. Garbage could be municipal pickup or it could be private pickup.
So we could access, so would we be asking for the road structure to be at municipal grade, standards so that if we had, garbage trucks entering the site B, C, and E, they could actually go up and down and pick up individuals? We still get the green bin, the blue bin and so forth?
That level of detail would be reviewed through the site plan process and they would have to meet a certain standard for private roads.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
All right, not seeing any other questions. Thank you very much, Jeff. So we'll now open the floor to members of the public to comment on this application. First of all, do we have anybody that's attending virtually this part of the meeting?
We have no virtual attendees and no virtual registrants.
All right, thank you. So is there any member of the public who's present today that would like to speak to this matter in support of or in opposition to the application? Please come forward. Is there any member of the public present today who would like to speak to this application, either in support of it or in opposition? Please come forward. I'll ask for the third and last time. Is there any member of the public present who would like to speak to this application, either in support of or in opposition? This is your last chance to come forward. So we have no members of the public present. So I'll say to the applicant, you have 5 minutes if you want to use it to respond to, well, any questions or issues arising out of the staff presentation. All right. So you're content with the presentation that you made at the beginning of the hearing. All right. So that means that the public hearing has come to an end. And so we'll now move into the debate discussion stage. Please, if you could please share the proposed resolution. It's a few paragraphs. So if I can get a mover and seconder to get this on the floor for discussion, moved by Councillor McCreary, second by Councillor Van Tilborg. Floor is open for debate. Councillor Carpenter.
Yeah, I've made my comments on other issues, but I know this developer. They've been around the city, AJ and Rob have been around for a long time, building in our community, and several developments have happened in Ward 4, and there are some future ones coming, and they've all been quality developments. I've had no problem with the site plan and working with them on making sure the site plan meets the criteria that the ward councilors and the neighborhood likes. They've been very amenable in that regard, and and I've had no issues with condo owners coming back saying, I got problem with my condo structure, it's cracking, and none of those sorts of issues, no development issues have I had with this developer. So as long as they work with the ward councilors on the site plan and making sure it fits with the Doug's Nooks Community Center and that area, I'm happy to support this.
Councillor McCreary.
Yeah, I agree with what Councillor Carpenter has said. Multani produces a good product and this will be a good neighborhood. My only issue would have been the lot width. I think we're going to look at parking problems in future, but staff have approved that. So that's how it stands. Hopefully this will get underway very soon, and you want to be mindful of the disturbance to the folks on Dover who've indicated some reticence about the development, and be good to make them happy and not be intrusive. So I'm happy to support.
Right, seeing no further discussion, I'll now ask Lisa, please take the vote.
Item 4.2 carries on a recorded vote of 6-0. Those voting in favor, Mayor Davis, Councillor Secoli, Sless, McCreary, Carpenter, Van Tilborg.
All right, there are no registered delegations. We have no notices of motion. There, well, the resolutions that we had, we dealt with at the beginning of the meeting. And so that concludes the April Planning Committee meeting.